Hello, we are on our last day of this 5-day live series where I'm teaching you how to harness your sensitivity so that it is serving you in every aspect of your life, in every relationship. I am also posting these lives on the CalmWithDom podcast YouTube channel for those of you who want to find all of the lives in one place. I'm publishing them on YouTube separate from the podcast. They're in their own playlist. And after this live today, I'll create a guide so that all of these lives are in one spot for you to go through, listen through, take what you need from them as you see fit, right? Of course, if you are ready to put a lot of these practices that I talk about and take action in integrating them, you can definitely get the free Emotional Intelligence Self-Reflection Workbook. I think that's a beautiful first step. And yeah, I'm really big on making my resources as accessible as possible. I was going to say attainable. I don't know why I was going to say that. Your transformation is attainable as long as you show up for yourself, right? And you do the work. But the work, if you need guidance from it, is accessible here. So that guide will be up on my Instagram page after this. The playlist will be available on the YouTube channel. Binge my podcast. I tell this to a lot of you guys who, reach out to me and request guidance and are unable to work with me one-on-one. I do have lower ticket resources and bundles in which you get my recorded lessons. You have access to it. You have unlimited access to it, along with more extensive workbooks and practices that help you integrate. My lowest price point is like $47 for the Foundation to Success bundle. I have the Roadmap to Self-Grounding course suite, which teaches you how to implement both shadow work and energy protection, because you can't do one without the other and vice versa. So being able to get grounded in your sensitivity is really important, using those practices, which are emotional intelligence building practices and skills, right? Those come with their own workbooks. That is priced at $397, and for both of those options, Afterpay is an option at checkout, so you can pay in portions. Outside of that, I have a bunch of free resources. And I'm doing this thing before I get into today's topic. I wanted to let you know my newsletter found out first. The broadcast channel found out after that. I like to prioritize my community, right? So if you want to find out some of these big specials and sales and giveaways that I do, definitely join the newsletter, which you can find a link to that in the broadcast channel. But finally letting you know to everyone else that I would love to hear some of your feedback on all of my resources, paid or free. And if you submit a testimonial, then you'll be entered into a raffle in which you can win either a free 30-minute coaching call with me or an intuitive reading from me. And you only have to submit your testimonial once to be a part of that raffle every single month, right? And the point is to... Hello, Malika. Hello. I'm just waving at anyone who pops on. And the point is to eventually get everybody who has submitted a testimonial to gain a free gift, right? In time. So, all that being said, let's get into today's topic, which is, I really wanted to focus today's live on going further into shadow integration and how doing that gets us more grounded in our sensitivity. I've got to talk about something that honestly can be uncomfortable for a lot of my clients, and it's understandable. It's uncomfortable for me too. You know, I'm not new to this work, and discovering what my sensitivity can do for me. But I want to talk about how, as highly sensitive people, we are a little more, what's the word? How do I want to say it? It's harder for us to take criticism. And that is, related to our emotional reactivity. We, respond very strongly to positive reinforcement, positive feedback, right? We benefit from that more than other people. And as I've said in like each live throughout the week, I'll say it again, being highly sensitive is a package deal, right? The pros that come with our sensitivities and the many different ways that it shows up for us, it comes with cons. And those cons are things that we have to be mindful of. We have to be aware of how they show up for us. And we have to be able to manage and regulate them as they show up, right? That's super important, so that we can cultivate our ideal environments, right? So we can cultivate soul tribe, which is going to be a big topic for this live. But yeah, it is hard to hear criticism as a highly sensitive person, because our emotional reactivity is much stronger than other people. So it's hard to hear sometimes. This entire live is going to be an invitation for you to revisit this topic, right? How do you respond to criticism? And I'm going to lead with my own personal anecdote. Let me turn my music down. I love my music, but sometimes I know I blast it. But I remember like 3 years ago when I found out that I was a highly sensitive person. It blew my mind. It expanded my idea of how I operated in this world, right? And it made a lot of things make sense, right? It made a lot of my processing make sense. And of course, the first thing I wanted to do was I wanted to find other people who operated like me, learn from them, hear their stories, and base that on my own experiences, potentially learn some ways and skills and tools to regulate myself, right? And in my search for this, what I found were a lot of great forums, Facebook groups, Instagram accounts, blogs, all dedicated to the highly sensitive person. But the common denominator that I found within these communities that I was discovering was that a lot of them became echo chambers, much like a lot of places on social media. Social media itself is one big echo chamber of a bunch of echo chambers. But what I found, as you pop on, I'll just wave at you. What I found was that these communities meant for highly sensitive people encouraged highly sensitive individuals, men, women of all ages, of all backgrounds, to vent and talk about their their pain points, which I related to a lot. But then they were kind of affirmed for their decisions to self-isolate and blame the people around them for their overwhelm and their overstimulation. And that part and that pattern that I saw like again and again and again, it didn't sit right with me, because I wanted to nurture my relationships. I wanted to show up for my people. And my pain point was that I kept self-isolating, and I felt like I couldn't show up the way I wanted to in my relationships because I would get so overstimulated, which would lead into overwhelm, which would cause symptoms that, fall under suppressive symptoms, anxious symptoms, right? I suffered from like panic disorder, and which grew into agoraphobia. It was hard for me to go certain places for fear of having panic attacks. And these were all just symptoms on symptoms on symptoms, and me trying to find the root of those energy leaks. It was discouraging to hop on these communities, see other people who operate like me of all different ages, and see that not only had no one really figured out how to deal with these energy leaks, but this mindset of being in victimhood in their relationships was encouraged, it was affirmed, and there is a difference to me in acknowledging your pain and acknowledging the cons and your energy leaks as they show up, and your emotions being important without succumbing to those energy leaks and those symptoms, and allowing that to have power in your life, right? It's like sitting in the passenger seat with all of your energy leaks in the driver's seat, and couple that with our cognitive distortions. It is a dangerous game we play when we do not have the space to see and acknowledge our emotions, but then take accountability for the needs that those emotions and energy leaks are highlighting for us, right? And so that's why it's so important to me that the communities and the spaces that I cultivate on here, and in the many different places that you can find me, I emphasize and encourage you to nurture the relationship with your sensitivity so that your needs are taken care of by you, because that's the only thing you really have to be accountable for, right? If your needs are not being met, then how can you show up the way that you want to? How can you show up for yourself? How can you show up for the many relationships that you care about? And also the relationships that you're calling in. That's what cultivating your ideal environment looks like. That's what it feels like. Calling in soul tribe, right? Attracting soul family and friendships and relationships that you've dreamed of require you to take accountability for your needs and to do the shadow integration part, right? To be able to receive and provide constructive criticism as needed, right? I know that conflict is very stimulating for us, Conflict, unexpected changes, those are things that, we can deal with like any other person, but it is harder, right? How we deal with them, how we manage stimulation in its many forms. I never want to encourage the narrative that you being a highly sensitive person is the title that will override your identity, right? Every highly sensitive person, we're not made the same way, right? No two highly sensitive people are the same. And your identity, feeling grounded in who you are as a person and what you offer to yourself and to the people that you love and to people you don't know and to the many different environments that you are occupying and taking space in, as you should, right? As you have every right to do. You feel grounded in yourself, and your sensitivity does help you do that when you are leading and nurturing that relationship with your sensitivity so that it can serve you the way that it needs to, right? But yeah, I never want to have your sensitivity override your identity, right? Or another way to word that is like, or if I were to give you an example, I would never encourage any of my clients to almost hide behind their sensitivity to avoid difficult things. Because you, the highly sensitive, highly intuitive, highly adaptable and flexible person that you are, you can be anywhere, right? You can thrive anywhere. Your struggles just look a little different than the people around you. And if you don't have the compassion for your process looking differently, then how will others get to, right? How will others extend that to you? So yeah, the point is to benefit from your sensitivity so it brings you home, right? So you recenter. And to grow and nurture the safety that is required in your relationships, especially your dream relationships, is to be able to receive and provide constructive criticism. And that's hard. That doesn't come easy to us, and that's okay, right? As long as you are willing to show up and do the work, even if it means, because as I say, your reaction is not your response. Those are two different things. And with your emotional reactivity, it's okay if it's uncomfortable to hear things that you don't want to, right? Our relationships are mirrors, and we're always going to be faced with truths of ours, versions of ourselves that we don't have access to on our own. So it's going to be uncomfortable, right? Seeing a picture or a version or an image of you that you're not used to. And it's going to be stimulating as hell. And that's okay. I just wanted to emphasize this topic because a couple of things happen when we are not able to accept healthy criticism. Being unable to respond well to some of our truths, packaged in ways that we don't prefer. I think it definitely ties into being unable to feel emotions that we have every right to feel. The first emotion that comes to mind right away is anger. I have met a lot of highly sensitive people, and I myself can say from my own experience, I've dealt with this for many years, feeling ashamed for your anger, right? That I'll make the connection from constructive criticism and anger and right now. But yeah, I I think that because we're so adaptable, I know that because we're very flexible and it's easy for us to adapt to the needs of other people, we do it often. And sometimes to keep the peace, we avoid confrontation, right? I know it's common for a lot of highly sensitive women to override their needs to tend to the needs of the group, whether it's just one other person, a literal group of people. And collectively, I think once you have that habit, it's hard to find space for anger, big emotions like anger, because anger is stimulating. It can be very stimulating. It's a powerful emotion. It's super useful to us, but if you don't know how to relate to it, I've seen some of my clients go from, baseline, not really baseline, but not communicating the need, not communicating their anger until they're pushed over the edge, basically. And what that looks like is not communicating that anger appropriately when it shows up. And that is super important when we are taking accountability of our needs, right? If anger is coming up for you in your relationship, it's because a boundary was crossed, right? There was a need that was neglected, and it doesn't have to be on purpose. A lot of the times it's unintentional. However, because of this shame around anger, it's hard for us to bring up our truths and speak our truths when they come up for us, right? In the moment. And that delay looks like skipping a bunch of levels and going from 1 to 10, right? And sitting with that and sitting with potentially your boundary being like crossed again and again and again. All because you're hesitant, potentially afraid of making the other person uncomfortable with your criticism. And that's just one way in which we can struggle with providing the healthy criticism in our relationships. But like I said, it goes both ways. When it's hard to receive that criticism, it's going to encourage this dynamic in not just one relationship, but in all of your relationships, of this like lack of communication. And I see that as a pain point for a lot of highly sensitive women that I work with. It's so common, and I hope that, if you're listening to this and you've faced this and have experienced this, that you don't feel alone, because this is so common. It's hard to balance both truths, right? You or navigate both realities. The reality of you being very adaptable, right? And to the needs of other people. And you having such a high level of emotional reactivity that your reactions, you could feel shame for them. And I think basically what I want to do with this live is invite you to find safety in both, right? Welcome the open conversations without going from 1 to 10. Because once you get to 10 and all of the communication that could have happened, right? Ideally, for example, when anger or disappointment or discomfort show up in your relationships, there's a lot of other levels in between, right? There are steps that we can take when we feel our needs aren't being prioritized, when a boundary is crossed, and whether it's intentional or unintentional. There's a lot of other ways in which you can bring it up again, maybe a little sterner, maybe change your word choice, change your tone, maybe even have the conversation in different settings, in different ways. And then, of course, after doing that a couple of times, and if nothing's changing, returning to self and doing what you do best, which is deeply reflect on, hey, is this a me problem, right? Before the issue gets brought up again, there is just so many levels before we have to get to 10 where we are boiling over, shutting down, self-isolating, feeling hurt, and allowing the reactions of others to deeply hurt us and scare us out of the relationships that we so desire, right? It doesn't have to be that way, right? We can welcome emotions and shed the shame of them, right? Your reaction can be one thing, but your response is yours. You choose how you get to respond, and it is okay if you take your time, right? We are slower to come to decisions than other people, highly sensitive people. That is a part of our processing. We're processing every factor, right? But it's hard when we don't give ourselves that kind of credit, and you don't develop your relationship with your sensitivity to understand what that looks like for you. How do you respond to criticism in your dynamics? How do you approach providing criticism? And, you know, is there a harmonious dynamic between giving and receiving? Sometimes it's easier for us to give than it is for us to receive, or it is easier for us to receive than it is for us to give. And you've got to be able to understand where you are, right? So that your relationships have a foundation of safety, to be honest, in the ugliness, right? In the uncomfortability. That is where our relationships deepen in these beautiful ways that enrich the history of your dynamic and the relationship that you have with that other person or the group of people or, you know, whoever, right? Romantic, friendship, acquaintances, colleagues, familial. Taking accountability of your needs as a highly sensitive person shows up in your relationships this way. Because no matter the history, no matter the patterns that have existed, you have the option to change it by stepping up to the plate, right? By taking action and actively implementing. And those who are into it, they'll follow suit. They'll follow you to the end, right? They'll follow you into a completely different stage of the relationship, and that's how you know they're soul tribe, right? And those who don't like it, those who don't feel comfortable with these changes, and you introducing newer ways to deal with honest communication and boundaries and prioritizing each other's needs as well as prioritizing your own, right? If they don't respond well, then you know, that relationship will follow suit so that you can make space for the relationships that you want to have, right? Where your sensitivity is honored and nurtured and prioritized, but you've got to make the first step, okay? And so I hope that this live encourages you and has emphasized your autonomy and your sensitivity, the power that you have to show up the way that you want to cultivate your ideal environment, right? That is all for today's live. If you want to practice these skills, you can definitely grab the free Emotional Intelligence Self-Reflection Workbook. That is just a great checklist. You can also write directly in that workbook if you want to print it out or fill it out in any of your devices. You can do that. But it's definitely good at helping you practice emotional intelligence building skills, which allows you to approach some of these issues, some of these causes of or conflict within your relationships, whether it's interpersonal relationships, intrapersonal relationship. I think it's just a great resource that I still use to this day. That's another thing, like these resources, all of the resources that I cultivate, like I use them all the time. And I think it's really cool getting to talk to you guys in the DMs and let you know how, as you develop and deepen your relationship with your sensitivity, the tools that I have, just in the CalmWithDom Academy and just the free resource, you use them in completely different ways. They serve you in so many different ways. So the way that I used that checklist like 3 years ago is not the way that I use that checklist now. And I'm not pulling that checklist out in the same situations, but it's really cool to see how those resources, they continue to serve you and also be a great like marker of your growth and your progress and process in getting grounded in your sensitivity. It looks completely different. So highly recommend that you grab it. You can DM me if you want like a direct link. It is on my website, which you can visit in the link in my bio. Any of my resources that you are interested in, they'll be in the link in my bio as well. You can DM me or comment under this live in body if you're interested in working one-on-one, so that you're not going at this alone. It is such a big difference when you have someone in your corner to be able to talk through a lot of your real life situations, individualize your coaching, and eventually get your transformation, get to your transformation at a much faster rate. I'm just gonna wave at those who've joined. Thank you all who have joined and popped on. If you are watching the replay, comment #replay and let me know that you are listening, watching, and as well as any thoughts or questions that you may have. This was it for our last live. I'm going to lower the music. And we're gonna end this live the way that we usually do. My feet have been up because it's so cold. It is definitely fall. Like, the outside looks like my poster and it's pretty beautiful, but it is very cold. So, okay, we're gonna end this live as we usually do. We're gonna take 2 grounding breaths and then we're gonna end with a sound bowl. Okay? Like I always say, as you breathe in, you can breathe in through your nose. Make sure that your chest and your stomach are expanding in unison together. And you exhale and they move together. We're going to do that twice. We're going to hold for 2 breaths. And then we'll do the sound bowl. Okay. Exhale any air you have left. Get comfortable. Breathe in. Hold. Breathe out. One more time. Breathe in. Hold. Breathe out. Nice. And here is the sound bowl. Okay. Thank you for joining me. Have a beautiful Friday, and we'll talk soon.